king of German mercenaries.
Chapter 302, Opening a School, Part 1. After Ada started researching sextants and marine clocks, he often complained about the lack of assistants, because research work cannot be done by one person. Although the hired Italian watchmakers could temporarily act as Ada's assistants, it was difficult for them to express their own opinions while they could do precision processing. After all, craftsmen were better at craftsmanship than thinking. Scientific research requires the collective wisdom of all. After all, no matter how good a person is, he or she can still make mistakes. In fact, when professors in later generations do research, they basically use their own doctoral or master's students. In other words, scientists generally need high-quality assistants. However, there are very few educated people in the country of East Frisia at present. How could there be conditions to provide Leonardo da Vinci with highly educated assistants? Marin thought about it and finally decided to select the smartest and cleverest among the craftsmen apprentices to send to da Vinci. After recruiting a large number of craftsmen, Marin selected a group of young men from the serf families under his name to learn the craft from those craftsmen. The total number of these young men was over 1,000. However, they belonged to different industries. Some learned to make clocks, some learned to build ships, and some learned to make muskets and cannons. Marin selected the 10 smartest apprentices from the young apprentices who were learning to make watches and gave them to Ada to be his assistants. At the same time, he also asked Leonardo to teach these young people when he was free. In fact, the foundation of these young people was very poor. Because they were just smarter than ordinary children, but they had never been to school. Because in the Middle Ages, very few people went to school, and they were usually either children of nobles or children of merchants. If the family had no money, they could not afford to go to school. Therefore, these smart young apprentices may learn things quickly, but their cultural foundation is too poor, not even as good as that of elementary school students. However, Marin has no other choice but to do this for now. After much reflection, Marin decided to build a school. As a count, Marin was qualified to establish a school. Of course, he had to co-found it with the church. Otherwise, if he did it alone, it might cause dissatisfaction from the church. However, the church in the county of East Frisia was under the control of Marin, so the problem of running a school was not a big deal. As for opening a university, Marin had not even thought about it. Because there were not many ordinary church schools in the whole of East Frisia, and there were not many primary school students, so who would be recruited to open a university? Therefore, Marin planned to set up a number of primary and secondary schools to train basic talents first, and then set up universities after these people had finished their secondary school studies. However, there is another problem that bothers Marin. That is, Marin wants the children of serfs to receive education, but it is not in line with the rules for the children of serfs to go to school. Moreover, it is estimated that they would not be happy to let a group of noble children go to school together with the children of rich families and copper serfs. After all, the social hierarchy in the Middle Ages was strict. The noble children would feel insulted if they were put together with the children of commoners, let alone go to school with the children of serfs. For this reason, Marin was very troubled. As a person of later generations, how could Marin not understand the simple truth that the masters are among the people? The children of nobles and rich people were born rich and prosperous, and their future was worry-free. Therefore, they often did not study seriously. However, those serfs would be very excited if they were given the opportunity to learn culture. Therefore, they were more likely to study seriously and learn more knowledge. But the problem is that this era is an era of strict social hierarchy. Educating serfs and nobles together is tantamount to humiliating the nobles. Moreover, when they are together, not only will the nobles feel dissatisfied, but the serfs will also feel uncomfortable. Finally, after much thought, Marin decided to run the school separately. His plan was to open an aristocratic school for the children of nobles, military personnel, and wealthy families. Yes, Marin put the children of soldiers and the children of nobles on the same level. Because he wanted to fight for hegemony in the future, Marin decided to give preferential treatment to the families of soldiers so that people would be willing to take the initiative to serve in the army. Therefore, Marin issued a special order: all children from active military families in East Frisia can go to school for free, and their treatment is the same as that of children of wealthy businessmen and slightly lower than that of children of aristocrats. The school they attended was a noble school jointly run by Marin and the church. In the school, students mainly studied the Bible, instead of language, mathematics, and basic military skills. Like the compulsory education promoted by Frederick the Great, Marin actually regarded the aristocratic school as a cradle for training grassroots officers. All students in the school must live in the dormitory and implement closed education. Every day, the students of the aristocratic school must get up when they hear the call, complete the assembly in the shortest time, and then run exercises. Then, the whole morning was spent studying the Bible and mathematics, and the afternoon was spent on basic military training or sports activities. What kind of sports activities were arranged? Need I ask? Of course, football. Football can not only improve students' physical fitness, but also improve their awareness and ability to cooperate with each other. Of course, as a primary school sport, Marin absolutely prohibits them from using dangerous moves such as tackling, because he does not want his reserve officers to have their legs broken by tackling. When they enter middle school, Marin will add courses in law and management for the children of the noble school. At that time, those who excel in learning will be promoted to civil servants, and those with good military qualities will be promoted to officers first. Because they have received semi-military education since childhood, these children will find it easy to adapt to military life when they grow up and have good basic military abilities. By then, we will be able to build a strong modern army, and we will need these talents to serve as grassroots officers. The biggest difference between modern and ancient armies is the quality of the grassroots commanders. In ancient times, grassroots commanders were illiterate and had no military literacy. They only knew how to follow orders from above. If the commander died in battle, these grassroots officers would lose their backbone and flee with the soldiers. Just like the last battle of Lisle County, when they heard that the Duke of Saxony was killed by a cannon, the attacking Saxon infantry immediately fled. Modern armies have a strict system. According to the modern military system, if the regiment commander dies in battle, the deputy regiment commander will take over the command. If the deputy regiment commander dies, the commander of the 1st Battalion will take over. If the commander of the 1st Battalion dies, the commander of the 2nd Battalion will take over. If they follow this order, there will never be a situation where there is no leader. Of course, this is because officers in modern armies are well educated and disciplined. Even though many of the PLA's grassroots officers before liberation were not well educated, they all received literacy training after joining the army. In addition, the instructors were definitely educated people and would remind those officers who were not well educated to avoid making mistakes. If the commander dies in battle, modern armies will generally continue to execute orders under the leadership of junior officers, or stay on the ground and wait for orders from the new supreme commander, and will never scatter in a hurry. Even if they retreat, they can retreat in an orderly manner under the command of well-educated junior officers, and will not flee. Marin naturally wanted to build such an army, but now the captains under him were basically illiterate. Even the company captains were in urgent need. Therefore, Marin was in urgent need of wandering knights from educated knight families. However, when Marin used these wandering knights, he also found that these wandering knights were too deeply influenced by traditional old military ideas and difficult to change. After all, they had received that kind of education since childhood. Therefore, it is difficult to expect adult wandering knights with formed minds to adapt to the modern army. Many wandering knights are still stuck in the knight's mindset of wearing plate armor and leading the charge. It is not very suitable to let them command infantry. Only a few people with flexible minds like Frundsberg can quickly adapt to Marin's modern military style. If the nobles were trained from an early age, when they grew up, they would be very suitable for the requirements of modern armies. In this way, Marin could easily form a team and be invincible, just like Prussia and Germany later. Chapter 303, Opening a School, Part 2. Therefore, Marin decided to jointly open 5 schools for nobles with the church in 5 cities across the country, Aurich, Emden, Leer, Norden and Denburg, to cultivate the military literacy and abilities of the children of nobles and soldiers from an early age. As for the children of merchants, although they were in the same school, Marin decided to open separate classes to prevent them from mixing with the children of nobles. Because the children of merchants inevitably have mercenary habits. If they are passed on to the children of nobles and soldiers, it would be very bad. Therefore, Marin opened separate classes for the children of merchants and even planned to set up separate branch campuses. Although they are nominally students of the aristocratic school, Marin does not intend to let them have too much contact with the children of nobles and soldiers. Moreover, considering that there are 10,000 regular troops in the country, it would be too scary if their children and brothers were eligible to go to school. Therefore, in the end, Marin only allowed the children of officers at the level of squad leader and above to enter the noble school. At the same time, the sons or brothers of the soldiers who died in the previous battles were also eligible to enter the school. In this way, the number of people in the noble school was avoided. Otherwise, if the families of 10,000 soldiers came to school, the number would be much larger than the population of Aurich, and the number of officers was very limited. Marin's 10,000 troops had a total of only 400 squads and 40 companies. In addition to logistics, the total number of officers was only a few hundred. Among them, many young officers did not have children, or their brothers had reached adulthood and did not meet the age for admission. There were strict regulations on the age of students admitted to the school. In this way, 5 schools can still accommodate them. As for the children of serfs, Marin really wanted to make use of them. However, letting the children of serfs receive the same education as the children of nobles was really challenging the social rules. After all, in the eyes of the nobles, the lives of serfs were like grass and could not be compared with them. If Marin forced the children of serfs into the noble schools, it would cause a strong backlash from the nobles. In the end, Marin came up with a compromise, that is, to set up a separate artisan school in the name of training serf craftsmen, to set up a school to train serfs' children. In the artisan school, students mainly studied the Bible, mathematics, and basic knowledge of artisans. At the same time, there was also simple military training. Of course, this military training was used to train soldiers, and the children of serfs did not learn military command knowledge. In the 3rd grade of elementary school, Marin would eliminate most of the serfs who were not good at studying and let them go home to farm or find their own way. The few who remained were all smart children who passed the exams. Then, in middle school, these people would be taught physics, chemistry and other subjects. Of course, it was not the complete middle school physics and chemistry that Marin had learned in his previous life, but a shortened version of physics and chemistry based on religious background, so as not to conflict with church doctrines. When they have finished their high school studies, the best students will enter the university that Marin will open in the future to continue their studies and be trained by Ada to become scientists. The others will all become craftsmen apprentices and be trained to become senior technicians. Most people would not object to Marin setting up a craftsman school to train craftsmen. Because, although craftsmen are richer than ordinary people, their social status is not high. Moreover, the most important thing is that training serfs into craftsmen does not violate the interests of the aristocracy. Therefore, no one would object. As for the opposition from the original craftsmen and handicraft guilds, would Marin care about them? He dared to massacre the nobles in large numbers, let alone the people of the handicraft guilds. If someone dared to jump out, he would not mind the butcher's knife being stained with blood again. In fact, Marin was not very satisfied with those master-like craftsmen. These people were the main force of the European citizen class in this era, and they were also the ones who loved to rebel the most. The craftsmen trained by Marin's school have signed a lifelong contract with the Hoffman royal family of Marin since the day they entered school and are prohibited from leaving. Therefore, they are all considered Marin's lifelong subordinates, and it is unlikely that they will leave or leak secrets. Moreover, their identities are also considered serf craftsmen, under the full control of Marin. Such people will not oppose the lord at every turn like those citizen craftsmen. Moreover, Marin will add brainwashing classes in school since childhood, and teach them every day to be loyal to the lord. When they grow up, they will be fanatical and loyal like the people of Chaosian. If they see members of the Hoffman family, they may be excited to tears. When they grow up and become the main force of technology, Marin will slowly let them replace the citizens who are prone to rebellion and let these people become the main force in the city. In this way, the stability of the city will be greatly improved. Thinking of this, Marin smiled happily. Afterwards, Marin signed a document to open 5 noble schools in 5 cities, and at the same time, open 20 simple artisan schools in rural areas to train and select engineering talents from the public. First, Marin would arrange a construction team to build school buildings. The 5 noble schools in the city must all be beautifully built with good facilities. As for teachers, they would definitely hire good ones. As for the 20 craftsman schools in the countryside, they should be casual, as long as they have a place to shelter from the wind and rain. After all, the serfs' children don't have high requirements. It's good enough to give them the opportunity to read and learn to read. Moreover, this can save a lot of costs for Marin. As for the teachers of the craftsman schools, Marin plans to send some literate craftsmen to serve as them first. When conditions are met in the future, professional teachers will be asked to teach. At the same time, in order not to challenge the social order, Marin's school only accepts boys and not girls. After all, according to Catholic doctrine, women are just made from a man's rib and have no status. If Marin's school accepts girls, it may cause an uproar in the world and make him the target of everyone's attack. Moreover, by only recruiting boys and not girls, Marin could save half of his expenses. As for the children of ordinary soldiers, Marin plans to send them to the artisan school for education, but in a separate class. Their tasks are different from those of the serfs' children, and they focus on military education. After graduation, they will not become officers immediately, but because they have a certain military foundation, if they have made meritorious service, they can also be promoted to grassroots officers. Of course, if some of them are interested in craftsmanship, they can also apply to be transferred to the craftsman class. However, while promoting education, Marin encountered a very troublesome problem, that is the problem of paper. In this era, paper was very expensive. Europe's current papermaking technology was introduced during the Yuan dynasty, and the raw materials for papermaking were rags, fishing nets, etc., which was equivalent to the level of Kai Luan's era. However, materials such as rags and fishing nets were limited. Europeans were generally poor at that time, so even rags would be fully utilized by the poor. Broken fishing nets would be patched again and again, and would not be thrown away until they were completely broken. Therefore, papermaking raw materials are actually quite difficult to obtain, which also makes paper expensive. It was not until the Qianlong period, that is, at the end of the 18th century, that French missionaries secretly learned the new papermaking technique in China and mailed it back to Paris, that European papermaking technology would have a greater breakthrough and the cost would be reduced a lot. At this time, paper was expensive in Europe. 100 sheets of 16-page paper cost as much as 1 gold coin, equivalent to 1.14 taels of silver. In other words, a piece of paper cost as much as 0.6 pfennig. An ordinary person could only earn 2 pfennigs a day working, which was only enough to buy more than 3 sheets of paper. A book usually takes dozens of sheets of paper, and a thicker one would take more than 100 sheets. If every child were given a book, exercise book, and draft paper, the cost would be sky high. Marin thought about it and finally decided that in the aristocratic school, each child would be given a book, but not exercise books or draft paper. Instead, each child would be given a small blackboard. The teacher would also use a large blackboard to teach and write with chalk. The blackboard can be used repeatedly and is inexpensive. The only trouble is that it would be very tiring for the teacher to correct the homework, because he would not be flipping through an exercise book, but a piece of small blackboard. As for the craftsman school in the countryside, Marin decided to let several children share a book and use a small blackboard to do homework. He could even use a sandbox that does not consume chalk. In short, he would save as much as possible. After all, there are so many children in the countryside, and even if chalk is used, it would be a huge expense. Yufei could write on the sand, so why couldn't these serfs' children? Writing on the sand table can be done with just a branch, which is really convenient and low cost. Of course, these are all solutions that were thought up out of desperation. In the future, Marin still plans to use books in an all-round way. However, before that, the problem of papermaking costs needs to be solved. Marin had read a lot of time travel novels and knew about papermaking technology. Papermaking technology is not difficult, but the difficulty lies in obtaining paper pulp. As long as there is paper pulp, the papermaking process can be easily solved by any papermaking craftsman. At that time, Europeans only used rags, fishing nets and hemp skins to make paper, which were hard to find and expensive. At the same time, the Chinese used bamboo or wood to rot in lime pools to make paper pulp, which took more than 100 days. Marin naturally would not use the above two methods. He knew two modern ways to obtain pulp. One is to use a machine to grind wood into fine fibers and then boil it into pulp. However, Marin did not have machinery, so he naturally would not use this method. The other is chemical pulping, which is to chop or smash the wood into small pieces, put them into a sealed high-pressure container, and boil them with caustic soda or sodium sulfate, Glauber's salt. In this way, the pulp can be cooked in 1 or 2 days. Unlike the ancient method used in China, the raw materials need to be soaked for more than 100 days, which is very time-consuming. There is no caustic soda Marin, but there is Glauber's salt. Because this stuff is more common in the Middle East, mostly picked up by Arabs from the saline lakes in the desert. Some saline lakes can pick up soda ash, while others can pick up Glauber's salt. As long as you buy enough sodium sulfate, you can make chemical pulp on a large scale and produce a large amount of paper. Moreover, the paper produced by chemical pulping is of good quality and better than the paper produced by physical pulping. However, chemical pulping produces a lot of polluted wastewater. But what's the problem? Marin knew that North America was full of forests, so he just needed to build a paper mill in North America. There are so many towering trees in North America. Marin plans to cut down oak trees to build ships and cedar trees to make paper. In short, make full use of the big trees in the North American primeval forests. As for whether it pollutes or not, who cares? With a large amount of cheap paper, Marin was able to promote universal education. Moreover, he also planned to establish a newspaper as his own mouthpiece and to help him brag. The great development of European science and technology actually occurred only after the emergence of advanced papermaking in the mid-19th century. Because paper became cheaper, scientific and cultural knowledge spread rapidly, and more scientists emerged. Mechanical pulping appeared in 1840, and chemical pulping appeared in 1851. After that, European technology began to take off with the support of a large number of books. By the late 19th century, Europe had fully entered the industrial age. Therefore, the development of papermaking is crucial to the development of mankind. Of course, before that, Marin still let the students use the small blackboard and sand table. But first, Marin had to set up a chalk factory and study how to make high-quality chalk. Chapter 304 Angela's birthday. May 2nd is the birthday of Angela, Countess of East Frisia. This birthday is unusual because it is Angela's 18th birthday. Marin had not really eaten Angela before because he was afraid that she would get pregnant too early and hurt her body. According to his idea, it would be better to do that after she turned 20. After all, Marin wanted to have many children and grandchildren in the future, so he had to have a long-term vision. However, Angela was dissatisfied. In particular, Angela noticed Marin's hesitation when he was matchmaking for Da Vinci and Lisa. Therefore, Angela was afraid that Marin would fall in love with someone else during the waiting period. Therefore, under Angela's repeated requests, Marin finally decided that after Angela turned 18, before that, in order to make Angela healthier, Marin would get Angela up early every morning and run around the Auric Palace together to exercise and reduce the risk of pregnancy. Because there was no garden, they would run around the perimeter of the palace. For safety, every morning when Marin and his wife ran, the streets around the palace were filled with guards to prevent anyone from taking the opportunity to assassinate them. At present, under the leadership of Marin, the city of Auric has begun to expand. However, the first thing to be expanded is the outer city wall. The city wall is the most direct umbrella of a city, so it naturally needs to be taken seriously. At Marin's request, 3,000 craftsmen began to build the outer city wall. Because the spring plowing was over, Marin recruited another 10,000 civilians to join in the construction of the city wall. Otherwise, with only 3,000 masons and stonemasons, who knows how long it would take to finish the construction. As for the Auric Palace, Marin had also made plans, expanding the site 4 or 5 times more than before. Once the city wall was completed, he would start building the new palace. The new palace would be expanded directly around the old palace, without moving the old palace. However, the old palace was surrounded by residential houses. Therefore, Marin needed to relocate the surrounding residents first. In this era, there is no real estate and houses are not worth much. As long as Marin compensates the residents with new houses of the same size in other newly expanded urban areas, no one will be unhappy. Soon, it was May 2nd. On this day, Auric became very lively. In order to make it more lively, Marin pulled the military band that had just been formed to play the famous Happy Birthday at the gate of the palace. Then, a group of young choir members took turns singing in Frisian and German, which are similar to English, with their tender voices. There were many guests. After all, Angela was now the mistress of the East Frisian county. It was the mistress's birthday, and it was a very significant 18th birthday, so naturally there were many people coming to the banquet. For this reason, Marin mobilized a large number of troops to maintain public order throughout the process and prevent any danger from happening. What surprised Marin was that his father-in-law, the future Pope Julius II, also came. What Marin didn't know was that Archbishop Rovere was having a hard time now because his French patron's attitude had changed. During the reign of Charles VIII, Charles VIII supported Archbishop Rovere. However, after Louis XII came to power, he flirted with Archbishop Rovere's enemy, Pope Alexander VI, and almost formed an alliance. As a result, Archbishop Rovere was in an awkward and even dangerous situation. Alexander had proposed that Louis XII extradite Archbishop Rovere back to Rome for trial. If it were not for the strong protection of a group of powerful old ministers left by Charles VIII, Louis XII might have abducted him to Rome and handed him over to Alexander VI. Therefore, Archbishop Rovere felt that it was not safe to stay in Paris. Coincidentally, Louis XII was also far away in Italy on Angela's birthday. Archbishop Rovere simply took his men, put on makeup, left Paris, and headed straight for the county of East Frisia. When Marin met his real father-in-law in the villa in the east of the city, he was also very surprised. However, he knew about the cooperation between Louis XII and Alexander VI. In fact, after Alexander VI promised to support him in occupying the Duchy of Milan and the Kingdom of Naples, Louis XII even reciprocated by canonizing Alexander VI's illegitimate son, Caesar Borgia, who had returned to secular life, as the Duke of Valentino. Louis XII and Alexander VI had such a good relationship that it was possible that Archbishop Rovere was sent to Rome. Through the conversation, Marin also learned that Louis XII almost sent him to Rome to be handed over to Alexander VI. If it weren't for Charles VIII's old ministers to help speak, Archbishop Rovere would have been finished. Archbishop Rovere told Marin that he would stay in East Frisia until the matter in Rome, assassination of Alexander VI, was successful. Although Marin welcomed this, he was also afraid because if Alexander VI knew that he was harboring Archbishop Rovere, he might excommunicate him and call on everyone to beat him. So, Marin decided to arrange Archbishop Rovere to the Frisian Islands, where he would be isolated from the world but not known to outsiders. So, on May 1, after negotiations, Archbishop Rovere agreed to stay temporarily in a secluded village in the Frisian Islands after Angela's birthday. However, Marin also promised to send a ship to the island to contact him at any time and pass on messages. Even all the expenses of Archbishop Rovere were provided by him. For example, buying assassins and intelligence and so on all cost a lot of money. In addition, Marin also told Archbishop Rovere a good news, that is, Lucrezia and Felice, mother and daughter, have been found, and Marin's men are arranging for the mother and daughter to come to East Frisia. Before, Felice lived in a wealthy family in the countryside of Genoa. She married the wealthy family's stupid son. Felice's stupid husband was not very smart and could not take care of himself. In fact, Felice was just a lifelong nanny that the wealthy family found for his stupid son. However, in order to survive, and because she didn't bring much money with her when she fled, young Felice had no choice but to marry a fool husband. Even Lucrezia, the mistress of Archbishop Rovere, had no choice but to work as a nanny in the home of a local tycoon, and was taken advantage of by the local tycoon. When Marin's men found the mother and daughter, they heard that there was a chance to leave, and they agreed without hesitation. As for whether the local rich man's family knew the identities of the mother and daughter, they were not worried about it. Given the local rich man's character, if he knew that the mother and daughter were wanted by the Pope, he would have tied them up and sent them to Rome in exchange for the reward. Then, Marin's men took the mother and daughter and ran away secretly. At this time, the mother and daughter were still on the way and it was estimated that they would not arrive in Auric until June. However, the person in charge of the operation sent someone to report the news to Marin as soon as possible. Archbishop Rovere was naturally very happy to be able to reunite with his family, and he couldn't help but drink a few more glasses. Of course, he was just a father-in-law who was not allowed to see the light of day, and he could not attend the grand banquet in the palace. The one who attended the banquet on his behalf was the fake father-in-law, old Nelson. The real father-in-law, Archbishop Rovere, could only have a separate table in the villa in the east of the city and drink by himself. In the evening, after the banquet, Angela and Marin quietly came to the East City villa and met Archbishop Rovere. After that, there was naturally a tear-jerking scene of deep love between father and daughter. That night, Marin fulfilled his promise, picked up Angela, who was 18 years old, and stripped her naked. Then, he pressed on her. What followed was a harmonious scene, 10,000 words omitted here.